meeting come to order. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Pelletieri for the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start immediately tonight with some recognition. The New York State Schools Board Association recognizes October 19th through the 23rd as School Board Recognition Week. We plan a special evening to recognize our school board members for their commitments to the children of our district. We would like to use this as an opportunity to raise community awareness and understanding of the crucial role our school board members have within our district. Tonight we have 4 talented musicians from Sachem North joining us this evening to play for our school board. Our violinists are Alyssa Kolakowski, Caitlin Cruz, Allison Bernardo, and Lorna Chekahali. They are led by their teacher, Dory Downs. Ladies. Ladies, thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. Thank you for coming out and spending time away from your family, but the extended Sachem family. Thank you. Little comedic relief. Thank you for that also. You're all dressed in black. Be careful. Truly outstanding. We also have some representatives from our staff units that would like to briefly speak to honor our board this evening. Mr. Phil Barbera from the SCTA.
Is it okay, right?
Sure.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Pelletieri, Board President Mr. Piccarello, Board Trustees, and District Cabinet. For our community members at home, my name is Phil Barbera, and I am a proud Earth Science teacher here at Sachem North. and the president of the Sachem Central Teachers Association. I want to thank Dr. Pelletieri for his and his cabinet for a moment for their continued work with us as well as the other stakeholders in this district to find solutions that are coming. But tonight is school board recognition night, and I want to take this opportunity to not only thank all of you as board members, but also give you a short history lesson. I will remind you that I'm a science teacher. Do you know when New York State declared its independence? It's rhetorical, I won't ask you. July 9th, 1776. Do you know when the first public school was established in New York? 229 years ago, in 1791. Do you know what happened shortly after the establishment of the first public schools? New York State passed laws establishing school districts and empowering its citizens to elect school boards. From the very beginning of our education system, people realized the importance of educating our children and for having its community play a vital role in the decision-making process. Your responsibilities as board trustees is incredibly important. Your decisions can change the course of a district. Your decisions will shape the education our children receive, and your decisions will help determine how successful our schools can be. You also took on this giant responsibility for free, but I know what you were thinking. I know you made a decision to not sit on the sidelines, but to take action. You decided that advocating for children and for our schools is worth your time and your energy. For these reasons, I want to personally say thank you. This year, for Board of Education Recognition Week, we'd like to make a $500 donation on behalf of the school board to Long Island Cares, the Harry Chaplin Food Bank, and another $500 donation to the Island Harvest, a local food bank for Long Island. We are doing this in your name, but we are recognizing these organizations for providing access to food, pantries, and meals served to our own Sachem families during the COVID-19 pandemic over the last few months. On behalf of the Sachem Central Teachers Association and nearly the 1,400 educators I represent, I want to say thank you to the Sachem Board of Education for your devotion to our Sachem community, our students, their families, and our educators. Have a good night and stay safe. Mr. Picarello, I have 2 certificates of these. Can I just bring them out to you? All right, thank you.
I would like to next call up Gemma Salvia and Dr. Danielle DiLorenzo from the Sachem Administrators Association.
Good evening, President Picarello, Vice President Wadawa, and Board Trustees. As President of the Sachem Administrators Association, I would like to thank you for your service to the students of Sachem. School board members faced complex and demanding challenges, especially over the last year. The contributions you make and the attention on the importance of education for students are recognized. That makes a difference for students. As board members, you continue to advocate for improvement in student learning and student achievement. You contribute countless hours to help lead the district with policies, listening to concerns from parents, teachers, students, community members, and administrators. You continue to work towards a common goal, helping students achieve. The time spent in board meetings represents just a small fraction of the hours you devote to leading the district. On behalf of the Sachem Administrators Association, please accept our token of appreciation for your time, dedication, and service for the students of Sachem. You are appreciated and valued. Thank you.
Thank you. I only call. Oh, wow, look at that. Personalized. Rob's here, yeah. I know. Be some jealous people in the building tonight. It's very nice. I'd next like to call up Bevan Lannis from PTA Council.
Good evening, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadua, and the rest of the Board of Education members. On behalf of the entire Sachem PTA Council, which is comprised of the 16 PTA units in Sachem, one from each school, and our SEFTA, we would like to thank you all for the countless hours you volunteer for our children, staff, and teachers. As a token of our appreciation of your service to the students in Sachem, the Sachem PTA Council will be making a donation to the Sachem Council Scholarship Fund in your honor. This fund was established many, many years ago, and each year, through donations and fundraising, Council is able to award over 40 scholarships per year to graduating seniors at both Sachem North and Sachem East. Thank you again for your endless dedication to our school district and the children of Sachem.
I'd like to next welcome Carrie Marone from SEFTA.
Good evening, Dr. Pelletieri, President Piccirillo, and Vice President Wadua, and the rest of the board members. I'm Carrie Marone, and I'm president of Sachem SEFTA. And on behalf of SEFTA, we'd like to thank you for the countless hours you put into a job that might seem very thankless at times. We appreciate all you've done and continue to do. I've given Allison our token of thanks, so I don't have to take the time to distribute them. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Jocelyn Stone from our Sachem Supervisors Association.
Good evening, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadua, members of the Board of Education, and members of the Cabinet. There we go. That's better. In recognition of your many hours of volunteer service for our community, parents, students, and staff, the supervisors are proud to have made a donation in your name to the Desi Strong Foundation. It is our hope that when you are faced with the new and ever-changing demands of your position, that you can be Desi Strong, which is to be courageous, be passionate, be positive, be competitive, be humble, and be a fighter. Please accept this gift with our ongoing appreciation and thanks for all that you do. Thank you.
Josephine Vaciento from UPSEU, representing clerical and custodial.
Good evening, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadua, Dr. Pelletieri, Cabinet, Board Trustees. Hi, Jim. We come here tonight, as we do annually, to recognize you, our Board of Education. As we all know, this year has not been your normal year. This year has been an epic year, a pandemic year. This year, even more so, each and every one of you deserve to be recognized. Some of you may or may not know, but I used to sit where you sit many years ago. So me, more than anyone, knows exactly what you go through on a daily basis. You have to make decisions that are sometimes heart-wrenching decisions. You have to gather all the information you can from administration and listen to what other parties have to say and who wants to be heard. This year, on top of all that, you had to wait for decisions from the state, from the county, and sometimes from the federal government.
You sit at a board meeting and discuss the issues in front of whoever is here and now watching at home. But for you, it doesn't end here at a board meeting. You take it home with you and do more research and try to get more answers so you can make a decision you are comfortable with making. We just get to go home. Now, some people may say, well, you chose to run for the board, and there is a reason you chose to do that. You chose to do that to try and make our school district a better place for our students, community, and staff. Sometimes people used to say to me, is it worth the money? And when you explained to them it was an unpaid position, they looked at you like, something's wrong with you. I'm sure you've gotten that look from time to time. But the reason you do what you do is because you care. You just care. Sometimes that's hard for people to understand. When I was on the board, we went through the redistricting, which was a handful in itself, as Jim can testify. You have the pandemic, a little different. This involves people's health physically and mentally, and all around what is best for the district as a whole. So I say to you tonight, thank you. Thank you for the time you give to this district because you care and want to make things better. Time you will never get back, as they say, but chose to dedicate that precious time to our district and all the people in it. So at this time, we thought it was fitting to make a donation in your name to a food bank, the local food bank, because I'm sure there's still people out there struggling from the pandemic. I speak for the two units, the UPSEU, which consists of all the clerical, and the UPSSU, which consists of custodians, mechanics, food service, security, grounds, and transportation. Joe Baruso couldn't be here tonight. He had a previous commitment, so I get to speak for both of us. So thank you again. We appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori Caliendo from our Sachem Nurses Association.
Good evening, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wadawa, trustees, Dr. Pelletieri, and Cabinet. The Sachem Central Nurses Association would like to take this moment to recognize the Sachem Board of Education during New York State School Board Recognition Week. As nurses, we recognize the important role that you all hold as individual board members serving the students and community of Sachem, working together as a team toward a common goal and striving towards that goal. Together, we are all facing new, very complex and demanding challenges in light of COVID-19. We do all agree that the student, staff, and community's health and safety must come first. Your vital contributions as elected public officials play a crucial role in the education of our children. On behalf of the Sachem Board of Education's contributions and in light of the pandemic, the Sachem Central Nurses Association has made a donation to Cohen Children's Medical Center in the board's name to support the clinical teams that remain at the forefront of care during COVID-19 for the children in our community. Thank you all for your service.
I have a series of certificates for all the board members as well, and a proclamation from the chamber, executive chamber from the state of New York for each board member, and a beautiful folder and school board recognition certificate that each will receive as well. And I just want to add on a personal note, I want to thank this board for accepting me, embracing me, bringing me in, listening to me a lot of the time already. So I appreciate that. And they just care, to borrow Josephine's phrase. I wrote that down. They just care. They get it. They're worried about the whole child. They spend countless hours of their own time. I call them, they're on soccer fields with their kids. They're in gyms, you know, trying to run basketball camps, and they're home with grandkids, and just the time that they're willing to give and the effort that they put in is incredible. And so I just want to thank each of you from the bottom of your heart, who each contribute in your way to the whole, And again, the 12,500 or so kids that we have in our family, our Sachem family, and those families, on behalf of them, I want to thank you all tonight. So thank you. So I'm going to keep going. Is that all right? Okay. Yeah. The Remote Learning Academy, we did it. We essentially built, with the help of our Teachers Association, our administrators, district office, a team effort, the Board of Education, we essentially built a school. We put together a Remote Learning Academy. It's going to have 900 remote learners in it. It will be for grades 6 through 12, dedicated remote teachers for our dedicated remote students. It will be, I believe, a sea change for what our students are receiving and their education as we move forward. It will be 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, from 2 to 5:40. There will be 5 periods: math, English, social studies, science, and foreign language. 5-minute breaks in between. There are administrators who will be helping to run the academy and set it up, and assistant supervisors. It was an enormous effort on behalf of many people. Some of those are here tonight, and I want to thank them. There will be an MOA that's going to be on the agenda later for us to approve. It was signed by myself today and Mr. Barbera from SCTA, creating this academy. Again, the proposed, this Sachem Remote Academy will do a great deal for our students. Live instruction, what we've been trying to create for our students 3 days a week. Again, all the lessons will be recorded in case a child has a scheduling conflict or wants to go back and relearn something. So they'll have access to that. Maybe they don't have a device, or they're sharing a device with a family member. So again, lessons will be recorded. It's been, again, an enormous undertaking. It's taking some time because we literally built it from scratch. And happy to announce that it will start on Tuesday, October 27th. Those families who are impacted tomorrow will receive a letter. Those remote families for grades 6 through 12 general education and inclusion students will receive a letter talking about the start of the academy, and they will receive a Connect Ed message when their schedule is ready to begin for those classes for those students. That will be for the rest of the year. The idea is that the students, the teachers they're with now, will share the work and the grades that have been accumulated thus far or earned thus far, and there will be a handoff to the new remote teachers who will work with the students for the rest of the school year. I don't know if there's any, I don't know, any, Patty, Aaron, Kristen, John, anything that I might have left out, or I want to thank you for your efforts. And again, many people in the room tonight had a role in that.
Board have any questions?
So now, what if parents decide that this remote academy is better than our hybrid schedule? Can parents just on-enroll their children and send them to remote academy?
So a part of me would say, wow, it would be wonderful. That it's so good. But again, I don't know how many parents will do that. But yes, parents, and Mr. Clayton has talked to me about this before, in terms of parents can say, I'm going to go remote, or I'm going to come in from remote. I would not expect an incredible influx based on this, but I am really hopeful and confident that it will be quality work. Again, dedicated remote teachers for dedicated remote students. Of course.
Dr. Pelletieri, the other 2 days, are the students going to be engaged in Google Classroom assignments?
There'll be assignments that are ongoing. They won't always have to report, but it is a 3-day live instruction. There'll be work over, between now and the next meeting, the following week, things like that. Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Pelletieri, can you talk about specials? Are they still going to do a Google Classroom for their special that's not going to be included in the remote?
So there are some groups that we could not get into the remote academy. Those students will stay with their teachers. For example, I'm going to ask actually Patty or Erin, whoever you feel is more wants to jump in on that one in terms of the specials and how we're handling those pieces. Patty? I see you reaching for the mic. Thank you.
Because it's 5 periods, that's going to be their core subjects only. So for their electives at this point in time, they're going to stay with their classroom teachers, but that's something we're still working with the SCTA on.
So as of right now, they're still logging on like regularly. There'll be work there. For their
Yes, and they can
specials.
do that during the school day.
We're still working on that piece.
And I just had a question about, I see a list of teachers on here. Is that the entire list of people that we've hired, or are we still looking for more?
There's a couple.
They're looking for more still in certain subject areas.
Okay. I only ask, I'm just wondering if, because that list is so small, is there a possibility that certain classrooms are going to be mixed? Will there be a 9th grade, will it be a Google Meet and there's a 9th grade and 10th grade math going on at the same time?
No, they're subjects, they're course specific right now.
Okay, thank you.
Secondary special ed, I noticed weren't included in a remote plan. Is there a plan for them?
Mr. McElhern, who did a great plan with our elementary students, is working on a plan with them right now
But secondary?
for secondary.
Okay.
Again, we could continue to wait until we finalize all these other pieces and just felt we just couldn't wait anymore. And so obviously these are important pieces and we'll continue to work through those.
Anyone else? Good.
I'm going to actually, Mr. Renda, if you don't mind, I'm going to flip it a little bit here and ask that you do your technology update now first before I do my full return report. I asked Mr. Renda to join us tonight. We've talked a lot about technology. I want to get the horse's mouth in here, so to speak, himself. Excuse me for the reference there, Mr. Renda, but you know what I mean. So I'm going to ask you to just kind of get us up to date on where we've been, where we are, and what we're looking at going forward, the synoptic version.
Sure. I'll have a little going up on the slide, a little bit of history first to start, and then we'll kind of jump in. So good evening, President Piccirillo, Vice President Wattawa, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Pelletieri, members of the Cabinet. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. As I came into this position, we were excited. We were opening 2 new schools. The district was finalizing the last of our technology lease agreements through BOCES, and we're outfitting our new building as well as our old buildings with new technology. And as we finished those, we immediately began planning for what we would need to be doing in the next year or 2 to start refreshing them. We reviewed various projects, including wireless, even back then at that time. And if you track our fiscal history, obviously you know that we moved right into a series of challenges. From low or zero budgets to the $18 million shortfall in aid that was brought up at the last meeting, mid-year cuts from the governor or threats of them, and the state aid formula that continued to take money from the district rather than replace it. With those fiscal challenges, it became extremely difficult for us to consider any sort of large-scale network technology upgrades or enhancements. Thankfully, through some of the Excel bonds, we were able to get a fiber network in place. We were able to upgrade our 1970s or 60s phone system with voicemail, of all things. Wow. And we were able to then take a look as well with some help from Senator Trunzo to start a wireless project and actually get a couple of wireless access points into our schools at the time. Our yearly allocations of budgets helped us to slowly chip away and keep things working. We were able to get some smart boards and some bright links into classrooms for teachers for their daily instruction, as that was really wanted. Keeping it all running was definitely a real challenge. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the incredible team that I get to work with, our school communication aides, BOCES staff developers, the CCSI engineers, our office staff all work tirelessly to help support not just the technology itself, but our teachers, our students, our families, our administrators. And through them, with these challenges, amazing things were taking place in our district. Teachers were doing some great things, even with our limited technologies, and really pushed the limits to try to see what they could do and make things great for our students. So we then had the anticipation of smart schools. We were so excited we were going to be getting all this money, and then it turned into a reimbursement program for which we had no money. And so there were a lot of challenges there as well for us to move forward. I'd like to fast forward a couple of years to say thank you, because we see an incredible turnaround. Not only were we able to ensure the funding for smart schools and receive the SED approval, but we're also able to make investments in mobile laptop carts that provided the much needed computer devices for our students to be able to work with and share in the buildings. The Smart Schools investment plan contained a variety of smaller projects you can see here, from our vestibules and our visitor management system to our video surveillance system, which is looking to replace about 525 old analog cameras with digital cameras, as well as adding approximately 390 additional cameras to our district where they're really needed. The consolidation of our network through wiring, network upgrades, and wireless, they're all linked together and represented here. You see a lot of those different boxes in the classrooms. Those represent individual switches, which are dotted all around the district, but barely in use. So the work we're doing to consolidate the network actually takes all of those devices and merges them into a much smaller number of devices, which not only helps us with our overall support in cost, but also our maintenance, our warranties, and any other support for them. This in turn then supports, with all that wiring, the addition of all of our access points in our classrooms and the potential for us to move forward, hopefully with some devices in the future for students and for teachers to be more mobile. The project itself also takes into account necessary storage that we have here in district. As many things are going to the cloud, there are still a lot of things that we do maintain here in district, and so we need to do some of those upgrades as well as some of our classroom technologies. Now, all this said, I'm most excited to talk to you tonight about the expansion that we're doing with regard to distance learning, and this is work outside of Smart Schools. This is the work that we've started this year. So as we began the school year, we were asked to investigate the potential to live stream on a large scale, and we put plans in place to move toward that. We immediately purchased 700 webcams, deployed those devices. We're procuring another 500 for any of those remaining secondary locations that may not have been identified at first, or some of those unique situations where we now have a space being used as a classroom to accommodate those, as well as any needs at our elementary level. We purchased Google Enterprise, which extends the free allowance that was previously given from Google to allow our teachers to continue to record all of their lessons or any of their Meet sessions. These record directly into the cloud and right into Google Drive, or easily shared through Google Classroom. And we continue to work with Google. They continue to make enhancements on a regular basis. New things are rolling out almost every day. For instance, we just made information available to staff about changes that they're doing, where Google Meet will now allow you to take attendance. It will do it for you for students, for groups that are over 5 students. So this will seriously help with some of our groups that are doing large-scale instruction with Google Meet. We actually take the time and reach out to Google on a regular basis and make recommendations as well. We've actually asked that this feature also be included in Classroom, which would be a wonderful addition for teachers to be able to see the students that are coming in and out of Classroom without any sort of separate assignment or forms. We provided various trainings all summer long for teachers, administrators, and parents, and we estimated about 1,000 hours of other PD that's been provided for teachers in grade levels and small groups since March, with more being done on demand with recorded videos as well. We continue to work digitally with our remote teachers on a regular basis, and now with the Remote Learning Academy as well. Most importantly, we began to immediately investigate all the network ramifications for upgrading our internet pipe. That is the main line that connects us to our internet out of Samoset and out of Sachem High School East. Looking at the number of streams we would potentially need, in addition to the current usage that we have for everything that's going on in district right now and all of our internet needs. This is the crux of the issue with our remote learning and the potential to stream that many live connections at the same time. We're working with our vendors, and we've been working with our vendors and BOCES to validate all those requirements, confirm any internal configuration work that we need to do in order to accommodate such a change, and secure all the necessary paperwork and quotes and whatnot to have that move forward. We're working to move on this as quickly as possible, and I do call BOCES on a regular basis and our vendors on a regular basis to see where we are and how we're moving forward with it to hopefully get this done in a faster timeline. So in light of the concerns about streaming, we had also made some great inroads with other software acquisitions. We're using Screencastify now in district, where teachers can easily record screencasts of things that are going on their computer desktops. We just introduced WeVideo as well, which is a great video editing and recording software. Both of those can save into Google or save up into the cloud. We're looking at some of the opportunities as well to save locally and then upload at a later date for some of the comments that were made in previous discussions. We also started working with Nearpod for interactive lessons and assessments specifically tailored to our special education and E&L students, as well as a variety of other softwares that provide both online activities and assessments in various disciplines. As has been mentioned here in previous meetings, there are a number of teachers that have been doing some great things like this for quite some time, others that quickly jumped on board doing amazing things, and others that are excited to get started. We continue to see excitement about this grow with teachers as we continue to reach out to them and assist them with what they're interested in doing. Teachers at Nokomis first jumped into this eagerly, gave us our first glimpses into some of the challenges we would need to consider, how to work around them, and how to work with them. I spent some time at Linwood last week as well with 2 teachers doing some SEL and science lessons with remote students and watched them do amazing things, even as they were just getting started with the streaming themselves. And the reports that have been coming out of Samoset for some of the things that the teachers have been doing there are very exciting. We're working to continue to grow this with our current bandwidth and expand the offerings to our students as best we can, building toward the opportunity that will arise when these upgrades are completed. As Dr. Pelletieri had mentioned, we're seeing people get better and better each day and are excited to see what more we'll be able to do as we move forward and expand with all of these resources.
Mr. Renda, thank you very much. The future is certainly bright in Sachem schools. I appreciate your leadership on this and again, the work from a lot of different people. I want us to continue to focus on looking forward, being future ready, our students and our staff. Very exciting time. And we will continue to see these pilots grow and grow from out the schools. I was in Hiawatha today. I saw a group of special education teachers working with special education students in a live stream. I was in Linwood just yesterday, maybe the day before. It's a lot. And I was in, Miss Dr. DiLorenzo, was it yesterday? Monday. Wow. All right, fast forward. So that was, again, great to see. I'm seeing them throughout the district. Samoset was doing so many at one point that they started to, I see our bandwidth had some issues there. So we're going to continue to work on improving this. And a lot of times I call Jack and he's on the phone beating up OCs to try and, in a very professional and kind way, to try and move this along as fast as possible. And I know you're expediting this. I appreciate all your work on this. And are there any questions for myself or Mr. Renda?
Jim?
I've asked this before, Jack. I'll ask it again. Do you have any idea of a timeline? I know that's hard to do because of a number of items, but do you have any idea what it would take?
The current issue right now is the gear. As Mr. O'Keefe had mentioned, I think at the last meeting, there is some head-end equipment that needs to be installed in order for us to be able to receive this. Our vendor through BOCES has apparently been in receipt of the signed paperwork and everything and are starting that work. They were estimating at least 30 days to get that portion of their things done. They need to upgrade their head-end equipment. They need to do some work at the poles for the fiber connectivity and things like that. So that's what they were estimating. The other piece, which is the piece that BOCES is finalizing right now as we speak, is the head-end equipment that we need inside of our district. That's at the discretion of Cisco right now. So once we get this finalized, we're hoping to get some timelines from Cisco as to how quickly that could be. Unfortunately, with Cisco, you don't quite always know. They're a very large corporation. The scenarios that I've been told to expect could be 60 days.
Meredith?
Okay. Please forgive my ignorance and my bluntness. I'm not an IT expert by any means. So I'm totally green with all of this, as are probably many of the parents who are sitting home. So this looks like a lot of work, and I appreciate everything you're doing. We have, as a board, we have to make decisions on how to get these kids the best education they can have. So when you say something like 30 days or 60 days, are you saying that we can go live with all of our teachers? I mean, we want our children to get the best education while making our teachers' jobs as, I don't want to say easy because the teacher's job's never easy, but as easy as it possibly could be.
Sure.
You know, I'm going to jump on that, Jack, if you don't mind. And so there, with this, it's not just we're going to walk in tomorrow, flip the switch, and everyone starts, turns on their camera and goes live. There's professional development that goes with it. There's making sure that we visit every classroom and that people are prepared and feel comfortable with this process. So, but we plan on doing that while these other days are concurrently happening, right? We're passing through those days. So we're hoping that we can, at the same time, as the bandwidth increases, more teachers are getting online, recording lessons and things like that, are able to do that and working through that. So that's really the vision.
Okay, because at some points we hear things like 18 months, and I guess that would be for final project.
And that started last year, that 18 months, that clock
Right.
ticking on that. And that has a lot to do with Wi-Fi, and we've talked a little bit about that. This is a different conversation right now.
Right. I just want it to be a little bit more clear for people like me who don't understand bandwidth and all that stuff as to when in your best guesstimate, I mean, do you think that before the end of this year, we can have a better grasp on live learning? I mean, I know there's a lot that goes into it. I know that there's a lot of different variables, but, I also hear things like Brentwood, a school district very large, had it all done in 4 months, but they may have been at a better starting point than we were. They might not
Sure.
have been dealing with a 1970s system.
Obviously, there's no way to completely estimate this. There is network configuration and a variety of other things that we need to do. We're hoping to be able to get a lot of that stuff done before some of these materials are in. And so I outside of, any sort of other information that we would know, I would hope that toward the end of the end of December, we'd be looking at, doing some sort of level of finalization if as it is the middle of October. And, hopefully that we would be able to have something like that in January or so as we start the new school year, the new year. But again, until we have that information back, it would be much harder to say that.
And the
and then-
ultimate end goal, I'm sorry, the ultimate end goal would be that we would be able to, at some point, have live teaching available in every single classroom?
Well,
Or
based on the number of streams for all of our secondary locations, that's what this is all built on. And so that's the expectation that when the bandwidth is in place, it would be able to support those connections. So as you were bringing up before with the Wi-Fi, that's really more related to, wireless connections in the classroom. All of our classrooms, as was brought up at the last meeting, are hardwired. So they're wired in, they've got cameras, they're ready to go for the most part. It's the bandwidth that will bottleneck and the traffic can't get out. At best case scenario, if we weren't using our internet for anything else, if we weren't doing email, if we weren't doing anything related to, showing great content in the classroom or using great websites and things like that, we would maybe get 250 streams or something like that at best case scenario. And so, therefore we're a far cry from what it would be, to accommodate all the necessary things. And in bringing up some of the other comments that you mentioned about other districts and things like that, there are other districts that have been able to go one-to-one and they have wireless and things like that. And so because of that, their internet was at a higher usage. And so they upgraded it accordingly. We expected that if in the future we go to one-to-one, that we're going to continue to increase our internet bandwidth because we'll have more students in need of using it. And so some districts were already there. As I mentioned, when I came in, when East and Sequoia were opening, that was our hope, within the first couple of years that we could look at wireless at that time, expecting that we would be able to do that. And in that case, we would have had more bandwidth. Other school districts made decisions, and I've spoken with a few, they made decisions in late spring and in early summer that they wanted to do the internet bandwidth changes. And so they did it at that point, and that's why they're kind of done, because that was, say 60 days or so approximately. If they needed to get gear or needed to get new updates and things like that from their vendors, that's where some of that went. But I mean, in light of all of this as well, I worked with Mr. Sachs and worked with our E-rate company. So because we do get E-rate reimbursement on this, we were actually able to take advantage of that as well. So on what we are moving forward with, we will get a higher E-rate reimbursement, which is nice as well. And they're making those accommodations for schools, like the ones that we were mentioning that did things either late in the spring or early in the summer, or like us now, to be able to make those accommodations for the remote learning and for the COVID-related things.
Thank you.
Sure.
Rob?
Good evening, Dr. Render. Mr. Render, sorry. I feel like we've been talking about this smart schools money. I think I still had black hair when we started the conversation years ago.
I had hair.
When it was spec'd out back then, and I think part of my question was answered just previously, it was spec'd out to be able to provide Wi-Fi, but it was spec'd out pre-pandemic, where live streaming wasn't something in the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
Piggyback on what Ms. Volpe said, if we were to upgrade our system the way it's spec'd out, how much live streaming would we be able to do? And I think you kind of answered that. Would we be able to handle the load that we need, the bandwidth that we need to be able to do it? Sure. And would students have access to this Wi-Fi as well during the school day? Would they be kind of put on hold so that the the bandwidth could be used for instructional purposes.
Sure. Okay. So, just to clarify, there are two different projects, two different types of systems. So, if you think about the Wi-Fi, just like the wired connection in a classroom, like a road leading to a highway. The road, whether you're doing Wi-Fi or you're doing the wired connection, still leads you to the highway. Our problem is the highway is only 3 lanes, and we need it to be 10 lanes. And so, when we look at that, if we upgrade our bandwidth, then our teachers are able to use the existing connections in the classrooms and the cameras that they have to be able to do the streaming. The Wi-Fi would really just give us the opportunity for mobile devices or students with other devices that are in the classroom doing those types of things to be able to use the Wi-Fi to connect and get to that same highway. And so it's really kind of, two different things. Whether we had Wi-Fi in place, whether it went from 18 months down to 6 months, it really is of little difference. The bandwidth is really what we need in order to be able to get the stream from inside the classroom out to the web. And so those are the real big pieces that we need. Outside of that, getting the Wi-Fi up and running will give greater availability. If students are bringing their own devices, or if we can move to some sort of a one-to-one, or if we're able to get devices for teachers, it would give them that flexibility to be able to work with their own devices or with district devices that are provided on the Wi-Fi. So it's kind of two different things. I hope I clarified that well.
Right now, some of the buildings do have Wi-Fi access. The libraries, I believe, have it.
Our libraries, our gymnasiums, cafeterias,
So
auditoriums.
we have access if we had to upload a video at that point.
Absolutely.
We could actually have the ability to technology to do that.
And each of the laptop carts that I mentioned before all have an access point on it. So you roll it into the classroom, you plug it into the network, and now that room is Wi-Fi enabled. You take out those 30 laptop carts and you work with those students in those locations, and that Wi-Fi is available in that location.
And the other question I had, and it was a question I think that came up at the last meeting, is do we have the capability right now of recording video and storing it on the computer for a later upload?
So the WeVideo is the product that we have been working with just recently, just was able to get that in place. And that has some offline storage that would then be able to be uploaded. I don't think Screencastify, I think Screencastify works to record directly into the cloud, as does Google.
Okay.
But the Google would require the stream to go up, and then it would record that stream in the cloud for you.
And WeVideo is already purchased and on the computers?
It is. We sent out a notification to staff on Friday, actually, letting them know about that product and giving them the logins for it.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Or
Hi, Jack. So for those watching at home, or when any of us board members are like stopped in a store, or as we're, mowing our lawns and our neighbors come over and say, tell your IT guy, you don't need 8 whatevers, you only need 2, or you only need 4. Can you explain why Sachem is different and we need the bandwidth that we do?
Sure. So
Thank you.
Yeah, each Google stream could require up to about 6 megabytes of stream of available bandwidth. And when you take 2 gigabytes and divide it by 6.4, you only get a couple hundred streams. And so if we wanted to get 500 to 600 streams, you need to multiply that by the maximum bandwidth of a Google stream, which is 6.4, I believe it is. And that gives you your approximation. And then on top of that, like I said, all of the other wonderful things that we're doing here in Sachem that require internet access obviously takes bandwidth as well. And so we want to make sure that we're accommodating for that as well.
Done all the research, so it's not like we could say, well, this school did this school did that. We don't need that because they're not Sachem.
Correct.
So Sachem needs this. This is what we're working towards.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the hardware that we're working to purchase will easily accommodate more if we need to. And that's a simple change. That's a simple dial-up change with our vendors.
So you're
rather
looking
than
towards the
forklift
future.
upgrade
So
we're
this
doing
is
now.
a
Correct.
plan for now, but then as
Correct.
we keep increasing towards the future.
Correct.
All right. Thank you so much.
And some of those districts as well have gone higher than they needed. And they're recognizing they went too high and they're dialing it back down because they don't need it all. And they thought they needed it. And so again, each district is very
Does
different
it-
in that
right.
regard, as
But
well
you
as
have a
how they
plan. We're
plan
going
to
to
do it.
start here because that's what we need, and then we have the ability to increase.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you so much.
Nope.
Jack, thanks so much for coming in tonight and
Sure.
and really doing a good job of simplifying what I think is some complex things for a lot of people, myself included. I have a very limited know-how when it comes to technology. I'm often described sort of as a black hole for it. I touch it, it breaks. But I also think I'm getting a little bit of whiplash trying to follow along with what's important and what's not. And I think for the community, like Laura pointed out, it's important for them to understand what exactly we're talking about. So I heard you mention before that, we could get to maybe 250 streams from the classrooms. I think you were referring to if right now we use the internet for nothing but the classrooms, that's what we could do. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, we need to get to what point again? 500 and something, you figure?
Approximately, based on the number of classrooms.
That would
at the
cover
secondary
all our
level.
classrooms at the secondary level.
I haven't done the numbers, and as I mentioned, there are locations that are now being used as classrooms that were never used as classrooms before. So I wouldn't know for sure 500 is the exact number, but we did go much higher than that in consideration of the bandwidth we needed.
So we're preparing for bandwidth in excess of 500 streams of, say, Google Classroom content
Google
coming
Meet.
out. So we need to really know how many classrooms we have at the secondary level, at East, at North, at Samoset, at Seneca, and so on. All right. Which is, we can address that maybe. In
Yeah, no,
a little
that's
while.
happening. And what happens is, and as Jack mentioned, there are different spaces that people come across and say, oh, you know what? We're going to use this as an instructional space now. So we need to make sure that we can stream and count those streams in as well. So we're planning on the minimum of 500 and being able to do more.
So
Again,
we're not
it's-
figuring, though, the rooms, like every room is hardwired in at this point. Like you said, there's a point of access in each room. It's just not Wi-Fi. You have to plug a cable in the wall, right?
Yeah,
so
most-
those wires are there.
Each of our
we
classrooms
we don't
should-
have the bandwidth to support every one of those rooms streaming.
Correct.
So I guess my question is, okay, we should know how many rooms we have that are hardwired already. Will the new bandwidth support every single room simultaneously at the secondary level?
Yes.
That it will. So we should be covered then, regardless of how many classes we have, 300, 500, 600, whatever it is.
Right.
We're going to be covered on that. So we don't have to worry about that particular thing. Good. The timeline. It sounded to me like you were saying by the beginning of next year, the bandwidth will possibly be available. Is that correct? Did I understand you correctly?
That is the hope, yes.
So at best, just for the community to understand, we're looking at, if we're lucky, sometime in January, we would have the ability to stream at that point.
Right.
The ability. Doesn't mean we could, because people may not know how to use the technology potentially, but we could. All right, so that's good to know. So we're looking at, this is October, really 2.5 months maybe.
And some people are streaming now, so we are able to sustain what is happening now in our pilots. And again, that will start to grow. And the hope is that as that grows, our bandwidth starts to grow and we can together.
Will it grow then in that case, Jack? Will the bandwidth be able to grow incrementally, or is this all going to happen at the flip of a switch in mid-January?
This will all be one at
So
once.
we can
yeah.
still only support 250 classes streaming at any
Correct.
given time at this moment.
Correct.
All right, so it's important for the community, I think, to understand that, because we get a lot of emails about this, like Laura mentioned, and some of the other board members, and I think it's important people understand these things, and that will alleviate some of the emails and some of the frustration. Actually, the frustration is going to be there no matter what. And my last question to you is this. It's probably way too late for this to even be considered, but I wonder, with your technological know-how, are there any other types of stopgap measures that we could use potentially that could provide us with the ability to stream outside of the buildings using the equivalent of hotspots or something like that could be done temporarily?
If you've been in the buildings, you know that Wi-Fi signal and cell signal don't really go very far. Our buildings are pretty much built like a bunker. I'm not sure of any technology that would, high power beam through all those walls and be able to do some of those types of things for us. Any other vendor that would want to come in here and put in some other level of devices or something are going to need to wire in to provide something that's high speed. Like even if we wanted to do something with, say, like an Optimum or something like that. I know at a couple of our schools, there's no wires going into those buildings. They'd have to, trench under the roadways and do different things like that as well. So
we would
it
at
would
least
really be a question to,
even if that were possible, it would still push us out probably further than what we're looking at right now to get the bandwidth we need.
I would tend to
All right,
think so. Any
I
vendor
think it's
that's going
important
to
for people
work
to
with us.
understand this is the best we've got. All right. And I'll just add the caveat to that. This is why it's so important to get our students that want to be back in the building. Thank you, Jack.
Meredith?
So one more question, just based on timeline. I know it's been said before that part of the reason why some things take a little longer is because it all has to be done when there's no students in the school. If in a hypothetical manner, we were able to shut the school down for 3 weeks, could you have this whole thing done in 3 weeks if the school were completely shut and you had access to every building?
So the things that we were talking about with smart schools is really more of that type of a situation. The bandwidth issue is the upgrade of the service by our vendor and the hardware that we need to receive through BOCES, as I mentioned, from Cisco. Those things are independent of the school being open. Those types of things are done in our network closets. That's work that we would be doing on the back end that would not be in the classrooms. Wi-Fi and those types of things are all the work that's being done and cabled in the buildings and all that type of stuff that's part of smart schools. So what we're doing with the bandwidth is completely separate from smart schools.
So the bandwidth is so live streaming basically depends on the bandwidth.
Correct.
And the bandwidth depends on people pushing paper, like people okaying
Working
it.
with BOCES,
They don't-
making sure that everything's
there's-
through and that we get the devices from Cisco and we're able to configure them and get them set up. Yep.
And there's nothing that motivates anybody to move any faster.
Well, BOCES has their timelines for purchasing and those types of things. And once those things come through, we're able to get them signed right away. The BOCES modification for the internet bandwidth already has gone through. We're just waiting for the stuff to come in for the hardware devices.
Jack, they have a board as well, right? So it goes
They do.
before a board. They have to wait for a board meeting to accept the agenda, and our piece is in there. So that's part of that issue as well. They
Sometimes, yeah.
can't just approve one thing. Stamp it and then next day.
Anyone else? Rob?
Jack, I know with school purchasing, you have the ability to buy it off the state bid, which means it eliminates the 45-day bid period and opening of the bids. Are we looking at purchasing equipment directly from the state bid that's already been vetted and approved by the state?
For certain things, if we need to. Right now, we're not purchasing any of those additional pieces just because of the situations with our current fiscal status for hardware and things like that. You're talking about computers and other things like
What
that?
I'm
or-
thinking is that if we're waiting for signatures and approvals and BOCES, their board to approve the purchases, would it be in our best interest to purchase this directly from the state bid, where we could avoid all that?
I would have to go back and check with Catherine on that and what that timeline would look like, and if we'd have to go through a bid with us as well. I don't know. I'd have to. I don't know if you know anything more about that, John, that you would be able to speak to.
You're talking about the equipment for the upgrade to the routers, or what type of
Well,
equipment?
I guess the hardware that's needed that we're waiting on.
That's the equipment from Cisco.
Yeah.
I don't think whether we were buying it from BOCES or directly through Cisco off a state contract.
So
It would
the way
change
it
the
is
timeline.
with Cisco.
I mean, there's a backlog with most electronic equipment, like with the 1,000, Chromebooks we purchased. There was a 2.5, 3 month wait.
Yeah.
Everything IT related seems to be on a tremendous backlog for hardware.
Thank you.
Jack, while we have you here, can you tell us about the process about breaking down the computer carts if we needed the Chromebooks to give out to students or faculty?
So any Chromebooks that we had in district were already provided and given out. What remains would just be our laptop carts. Those were the carts that were provided to the buildings and, provide the access for the students with the local Wi-Fi. It's got programming specific to the district. And it's designed to work, on the district and check in. So there would be a variety of things that we would have to do. We'd have to break down the carts first physically. We would also then have to go in and reconfigure each device because they're not designed to be off the network. They would only last 6 months off the network because of the fact that they do need to check into our district licensing. We do have some devices that were lent out as part of the group in the spring, and we're looking to have those brought back because they do need to check in. So there is a variety of configuration changes that we would need to make, as well as the fact that we would usually need to log them in individually as the student before it left the district, because once it leaves the district and they try to log into it, there's no longer a SACHM network for them to validate against, so the computer wouldn't know them. So there is some configuration that we'd have to go through and individualize them as we go.
And do we know exactly how many Chromebooks we have, how many are out, and how many people are on a list waiting for them for need-based? I know a lot of students are using their phones, and I don't know, just being home alone is not conducive to learning, but learning from an iPhone is certainly not the best method. So I'm just wondering if we have numbers on any of this.
Yeah, I know the number of laptops is in the 200 range from Samoset. I'd have to double check what the Chromebook count is. At present, I believe there are only 27 people left on the list, and we're trying to do whatever we can to try to make an accommodation for them. We have had a couple of parents return one, say we don't need it anymore, or we went out and we were able to purchase something, or some people had said, I have 3 devices at home, I just didn't have a webcam. So I was able to buy a webcam, and now I'm just returning the device to you. So we're reallocating those as best we can. We do also continue to have people enrolling in the district, registering in the district, that are without a device or maybe in an alternate home placement or something like that. We're trying to accommodate those as well. So, but at present, I believe the number is at 27. We were able to accommodate everyone else so far that's come forward and said that they don't have a device at home to use, and follow up in that regard.
All right. Thank you, Jack.
Sure.
Can I just add, Jack, if I don't have a device at home or need another device for my student who's now attending the remote academy, how do I go about requesting one?
So we usually are going through the building. So usually it comes into the building principal, the psychologist, social worker, and that information is then routed to us, just so they can confirm that, the child definitely doesn't have something at home, something to share, or there's not another device available. We'll just confirm that, nothing was provided that we know of, and then we'll try to put them on the waiting list and hopefully have something for them sooner than later.
Thank you. Good.
Meredith?
The Board of Ed, we each have a Chromebook. Would it work for a student?
Mhm.
So can I donate mine back and
Sure.
give it to a student?
I already
Yeah,
did.
Mr. Picarello did the
I did
same
a
as
while
well.
back, and we
Oh.
gave it up.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good.
Mr. Renner, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. So I'll continue now. Last meeting, the board charged this group, or myself and the team here, the cabinet, to look at the feasibility of returning all students at the secondary level to schools. I visited the 5 schools, or 3 middle schools and 2 high schools with Mr. O'Keefe, and I'm going to start with our conversations with our middle school folks. There were decisions made around middle schools that took place in the summer that impact our ability now to change things. So, for example, we made decisions around music classes. We put 80 kids at a music class because only 40 kids would be in at a time. Or we put 30 kids in a tech room because we knew only 15 would be in at a time. Well, now to bring those students back, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, because we'd have to change all of those programs. We are feeding 300 kids. We would have to feed 300 students at one time at lunch. And currently, with the 6-foot rule, we would not be able to do that. We are looking at rules around lunch and desk shields and bringing students back if we could move them closer. And that's something I've asked Mr. Clayton to examine closely, and he's working on that right now for us at the elementary and secondary level. So it would be extremely difficult. Our 2 middle schools in particular, Sagamore and Seneca, are smaller. Samoset used to be a high school and is a bigger school. But again, having 300 kids in by grade to feed at the same time would be close to impossible. I did visit our 2 high schools with Mr. O'Keefe this past week, and there is more room in East and in North high schools. To the extent that we could look to, if we were thoughtful and careful and health conscious, start to, I think, bring more and more students in with desk guards. We'd have to be thoughtful about it, again, as I mentioned, but I could propose or suggest that we look to, thus far, we have all of our special education self-contained students in, and one of the things I could propose 6 through 12 is that we look to bring in all of our ICT or inclusion students, grades 6 through 12. I worked with our principals, middle schools and high schools. We feel that we could work along those lines to bring those students in, take a look at what's happening in those schools with those guards. We'd have to purchase guards for those students. We'd have to come up with a model as to whether or not they walk with them from class to class. Do they leave them each night and get cleaned? How do they get cleaned? Those are all pieces that we'd have to work with. Do they take them to lunch? Do we just buy enough to affix them to desks so that they're in desks and kids arrive at the class with them in the desk already? Those are all things that would have to be looked at. We also could look at bringing in grade by grade, for example, at both East and North. I spoke with the principals and they felt that they could accommodate having our seniors, for example. That's a grade that they felt concern around, and that we could bring our seniors back. We could look to do this, purchase the guards, appropriate the money. When I say guards, I mean the shields, the desk shields, appropriate the money for them. We have to remember that there are computer labs that need different types of shields. There are art rooms that have different types of desks. So we'd have to purchase different shields for those as well. But we could make purchases around desk shields for ICT students 6 through 12. And if we wanted to think about bringing seniors back as well. If those things work, we could look to do something around bringing these students back in mid to late November. If that worked, if we were safe, if we felt comfortable, if we felt that things were working in those schools around, again, numbers of students in those schools, because remember at 50%, we're at 1,100 kids. Now you're going to be talking about more and more and more and getting closer to 2,000 students in both your high schools. We would be talking about at some point down the line trying to bring in more students or more grades on a for lack of a better term, a slow roll, making sure that, again, we're able to feed them, we're able to accommodate them, we're able to have them move throughout the buildings carefully, safely, whether carrying shields or shields affixed to in place with desks. I just want to mention that there was a survey I participated in. 52 Suffolk County districts participating in the survey. 4 have all in K to 12, just 4. Hauppauge, Shelter Island, Shoreham Wading River, and 3 Village. None are really the size of Sachem schools. So I just want us to be cognizant of that.
Chris, the high schools are saying that they could give it a shot at the senior level only at this point. What about the cafeterias? I know that was always an issue as far as all the desks are being used now in the cafeterias for spacing and class. And, what happens? Where do the seniors?
We had purchased additional desks this year, actually last year, I think it was, for testing. So we have these additional desks in both those schools. There are spaces, again, in East, right outside the cafeteria, where we could put students. There's space in a back gymnasium over at North where we could put students for lunch. So we can accommodate, because we have spaces, larger spaces in those 2 buildings as opposed to the middle schools.
And what would you use as a reason for either putting the shields on the desks or carry? What are you looking at as to make that decision?
It'd be, I think, easier to just affix them to the desks and leave them there, so kids are not walking through the halls with desks or walking on buses or walking through the streets with shields. But we have to think about, be cognizant of cost as well. And so we have great many more desks than we have students.
Yeah, my concern would be more in the area of cleaning them than anything else. I mean, seniors go from class to class from different subjects. So you're going to have one senior come in and sit behind another senior's.
Yes, if they are affixed to the desk, there's no reason really to touch them, but you're right. They'd be sitting there for 40 minutes, however it is, behind that shield. We could put, as many districts have, wipes in every classroom, and students could use them if they chose to wipe it down or bring their own if they wanted to. They wouldn't have to, but they could choose to do that.
If I could ask counsel then, just if the responsibility, the accountability on cleaning those shields left up to the students is probably not wise, what is our liability?
Those are the very issues that I've been discussing at length with the superintendent, and we're continuing to probe as a part of the overall decision-making and the plan that would be presented to you. I mean, you've raised a lot of concerns. Some of them I would discuss with you when we talk about liabilities, in the context of exec session perhaps. But yeah, I mean, the concern is always that, when you talk about the fixed desk shields as opposed to those which you would carry, the benefit that you would see from those that you carry is the student would be responsible for his or her own shield, and therefore you're less concerned about that cross-contamination. That's not the word you used, but I think that's what you're talking about with kids coming in multiples behind the same shield and the possibility. And again, the governor says it all the time in his press conferences. We don't know everything that this virus is going to do. We don't know everything that is going to happen. And do we get into a situation where we install a fixed thing and then there's some determination that, the contagion can remain on there between two students? And does that create a different burden for us for contact tracing? Can you deputize kids and rely on them as deputized to clean those things up? Those are all things that you've predicted, and we've been, as we have, as potential issues to be discussed and concerned about. There are districts who are doing it. The provision is masks and shields gives us the permission to more closely situate our kids than that 6 foot, excuse me, I said 6 inches, 6 foot distance, which would give us the capacity, obviously, to put more kids in a room and provide that greater opportunity that Mr. Coggin referred to get back in for live instruction. But you've certainly identified some of the very things that we've been wrestling with, both legally and, the guidance can sometimes differ between what you see. We've talked about this in past meetings, what state ed says, what the Department of Health says, and so forth, and reconciling those issues, making sure that we're compliant and making the best decision for our kids, both from the perspective of safety and from opportunity for, education, which we all, I think, recognize from the outset as a fundamental underpinning of what we're talking about. That chance for kids to be back here, live instruction with their teachers, is something we all cherish, but we always have to balance it with those safety concerns that you've identified and that I think that the superintendent has been studying scrupulously, and certainly to the extent that I can help with all of those issues. And it's, it's not just liability. We don't want people to think that we're, so afraid of our shadows from a liability standpoint that we wouldn't pursue what's best for our kids, but it's safety. I think safety is the more operative word than liability, but certainly liability is a concern.
Are there juniors that are in senior classes? In other words, if you went okay, we're going to do this, and they're going to carry the seniors are going to get individual shields, and then it's a day where I'm just trying to think where a junior may be in a senior class. Does that happen? Okay. Does that junior, now he doesn't have a shield. We're going to get the shield for those types of.
Anytime we made a purchase, so for example, in the inclusion, the ICT, if we bring our ICT students back and they're going to be in a classroom, let's say there's 4 or 7 in a classroom, the other kids in the classroom, it won't be just them with a shield. We would have to make purchases for those other students as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question, just because Jim brought it up? Who's currently responsible for cleaning the desks without the shields in between periods? So I know that we're concerned about liability for the shields themselves, but I walk into classrooms all day, every day, and nobody wipes the desk that I'm sitting at.
Yeah, we
without the shield. So I'm just concerned that we're and rightfully so. We're nervous about something that isn't already happening, and nobody seems to be liable or nervous to open the building daily. So I'm just concerned that we're bringing up a fear that we can't control anyway.
So guidance, each night we are deep cleaning and wiping down all the surfaces in the building and throughout the day as well. I see doorknobs and things, high traffic area places. So the guidance says that each night we need to do that. There is no wiping down every period of every seat or every chair or desk.
Okay. Nope.
At this point, I've had the experience of working with students carrying shields around. And about 2 weeks ago now, as I mentioned to the board before, now they're mounted permanently to the desk. So no one carries a shield on unless they choose they want to carry their
they're
own
permitted to
shield.
bring their own if they
So
want.
For somebody who's very sensitive, they have the option of carrying their shield. It's the parents of those students that make them carry the shield.
Sure.
It's never the student.
Sure.
I might add, but it's very few students that actually do that. But my point, one of my points is this. Once that shield is affixed to the desk, they really don't touch it. There's no need to touch it. You're behind it. You're not handling it. You're not putting your face on it like, a mime or something like that with your hands there. And when they were carrying the shields around with them daily, the shields were getting filthy. And I mean filthy. You can only imagine. If you've been in a teenager's bedroom, Imagine what the shield must look like. It really doesn't become a problem with them being dirty and not being cleaned. And I don't know, do we have electrostatic sprayers that we purchased here in the district? Do we have them or no?
No.
We do not. So, I mean, if it were a big concern, I would imagine we could move on to that technology. And anybody who's seen that technology, I know a friend of mine is a facilities manager, and he's demoed it for me and showed me how it works. In fact, I know one of the custodial staff that actually used the device. He's my daughter's boyfriend, in fact. So I've seen this up close and personal. We use them in my school as well. They go through, they spray the rooms, and I mean, everything gets covered. The papers get covered, everything under the desks, it gets on, everything, and it's sanitized. That's it. And it takes minutes for a whole room to be done. So this is possible, all right, if that's the concern. I don't necessarily think we need to be at that level of concern. And for students who want to clean the desk, every room should have cleaning materials in it for a student who wants to clean the desk. So we can do this. That's possible. I don't think this is really worthy of too much of a conversation.
Meredith?
So I think absolutely the ICT children are the first that need our concern. I can see why we would want seniors, one, for the social and emotional, definitely, but because it's a lot easier with seniors. Many of them do not have a full day. Many of them leave early, so we're not worried too much about them being in a cafeteria because most of them don't take lunch. The last time, and I do a lot of brainstorming and I do a lot of thinking outside the box, and sometimes my thinking outside the box doesn't always work, and I'm brought back down off the ledge by some very smart and reasonable people on the other side of my emails. But one thing that I did think about, and and it's been kind of made fun of in the community, but maybe it's not such a bad idea, the lack of lunch. If we did a survey district-wide, how many children? I mean, I have a son who's never taken a lunch. He's a junior. I know many people don't take lunch. How many children would be okay with a 7-period day, and then their 8th period is essentially their lunch period? One of my other sons has 7th period lunch right now. So if we did a 7-period school day for the children, then that gives the teachers that 8th period to do what they need to do as prepping. It gets everybody out of the building, and we don't have to worry too much about the cafeteria. And then we could make parameters around children who absolutely need a lunch period and things like that. Again, I know there's a lot of different things that go into this, and this sounds like a really great idea to me in my head, but probably has reasons why it wouldn't be the best idea in the world. But these are things that I think we really need to start thinking about, because these kids really do need to be back in. And I did get some emails, and people did say things about the shields and the expense. And I liken it to a pencil. When you buy a pencil, you know that you're going to dispose of that pencil at some point, but it is going to do its job, and it is going to help your child with their education. There are many things that we buy knowing we're going to dispose of them. Paper products, toilet paper. We know we are buying these things and we are going to dispose of them. And I don't take buying these lightly, but I do say that they are helping our children's education, helping all of our children get back in, helping social and emotional. And the other things we can work on. Another idea for the cafeteria is, many years ago, we used to have an open campus, and we don't. And I don't think I agree with an open campus for 9th or 10th graders, but certainly for 11th and 12th graders who have the ability to drive. That's another thing that we could possibly explore, because then 11th and 12th, that takes that many more children out of the cafeteria, and again, helps us get everybody back in. And as far as the music classes, I understand in the middle school, so if we went all back in, we'd have 80. But can't we do that in our auditoriums and still stay socially distanced? I mean, our auditoriums, how many people do our auditoriums hold?
Yeah, we are spread out. I actually took a picture at Seneca. They have a beautiful auditorium now. And they are so spread out already, because music, they have to be spread out further, that they're already taking up the auditorium with the 40 kids. And so 80, what happens is you can't fit them in. I could break sections and then put them in another space and hire teachers First, I'd have to hire more teachers. Secondly, I don't have a space to put them in. So that's the problem. So again, the decisions made where we thought we'd be one way, and now we're trying to adjust to go another way. So middle school is going to be really, really difficult, if not impossible, to get all in.
And then another suggestion, like, because I don't think any child is more important than any other child, but I do think that sixth graders struggle a lot more being home than any other grade out of 6th through 12th. And I mean, can we do surveys? If we got every 6th grader in, then maybe we would need every 8th grader home full-time, but learning the way that they did when North was shut down. When North was shut down, those kids learned, my own kids learned better those days than any other hybrid days. I mean, the things to think about.
Okay.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I have a little bit of a list, but I have 2 questions. Is there a reason we haven't looked into adding more lunch periods at the middle school? Right now, there's only 3, right? It goes by grade. So at the high school, I know that there's a lot more. I don't know, Patty, you could probably help me. How many periods of lunch do they take at the high school? All right, so it's basically 2nd through 8th. And at the middle school, we do 3 periods by grade.
I think it is. I think it's 4 periods.
4 periods?
Mhm.
All right. And I mean, have we looked into possibly adding 1 or 2 of them so that we can lessen how many people are in there? And then when you spoke to the high school principals, did they say they can only accommodate the ICT
Oh, no.
students and seniors, or did they say they can accommodate everybody, but we're looking to roll it in slowly?
They will eventually. Again, we got to figure out desks, guards, where they have to go. What are we going to do with the shields? I mean, they have the space to eventually get everyone in. I would caution us to do that in short term. I would want us to roll those things in and make sure that we are doing it right and safely and thoughtfully each and every time.
Laura?
Thank you, Dr. Pelletieri. Last time when we spoke, I had said we should have a plan. I think rolling it out slowly, like you said, bringing back at a time, the health and safety of our staff and our students is our number one concern, like you said. And it was funny. I was at a get-together, a Sachem get-together. I didn't graduate here, but my siblings did. And they were all talking about split sessions where some went in the morning, some went in the afternoon, and they had to bring brown bag lunch. And, none of their parents were complaining. It was what it was. And but we want to get our students in as safely as possible and back to school. With putting the desk shields on the desks. So as Bill was saying, to carry them around, that didn't seem practical to me at the time. And for the kids who are nervous, there are wipes in the classroom, so they wipe down their desks now. So if they were still nervous, they can wipe down the shields. But then would we have to buy the shields for every single solitary desk, or only as we roll out and bring in the different students, you would identify those classrooms that needed them? Like, how would that work?
Yeah, that's exactly what we would do. We would start out probably with purchasing them per student and then look at places where we could put them and fix them to desks and then see where we needed them. We need them on these desks. We don't need them on these other desks. We'd have to be again, we have to live it a bit. That's another reason why we want to roll it in so that you can live it each time and know how you're doing it and make adjustments
Right.
on the
I
fly.
think rolling it in is smart, instead of opening with a million problems all at once, preparing as we go along instead of preparing after the fact is probably a better plan.
One of the concerns at both high schools is the desks themselves are a mix of different sizes and shapes, and colors don't matter, but there are a mix of colors as well. And what happens is the standard guard won't fit all of those. And so we're going to have to get some custom made for us. And then you have classrooms that have this guard, that could fit this guard. A desk here fits one guard, another desk needs a different
So
guard.
there's not enough
It's going to
uniform
be-
desks to at least start.
No,
Got
someone
it.
sent me a lovely picture from Massapequa today. A teacher, a parent of ours who teaches there, and everything. You had to see those desks, brand new, shiny, beautiful desks, all the same means by which, and everyone had that same shield. We are not going to have that.
And again, that's the same thing. When people say in this district, it does this way, in that district, it's not
Right, you
Sachem.
can do-
So
yeah.
people don't know the unique issues that go on here. And the size, like you said, there's only 4 districts in all of Suffolk County that have everybody back full time. There's a reason for that. And again, Sachem has very unique issues different from many districts also.
I read a study this afternoon. 20% of New York State is in-person education right now. Only 20%.
Rob?
Chris, I know we spoke yesterday, and one of the major concerns I have is that when you look at ICT, and I'm all for bringing that population back, I think it's extremely important. But when you look at the number of students registered to a class, you have to count the regular ed teacher might have 20, okay, and then the special education teacher might have an additional 10 or 12. So by bringing those students back, we're looking at classes of 30 plus students, and to be able to distance them appropriately as well as put shields up. I don't know so much of our rooms will hold 30 people safely. Are we looking at increasing the number of sections for that to keep the numbers down to an appropriate and safe level? Or are we looking to put 32 kids in a class?
Yeah, we would not have the space, the rooms to start to break up those sections, or the staff to start break up those sections. Patty, do you want to use your mic, Patty? So, Patty, use your mic, please.
You wouldn't be bringing your gen ed back at all, like all of them. So you'd only if you had 20, you'd only have 10, and then the 12 total special ed ICT students. So the total you would have at that point would be 22.
But eventually, if we did bring all back,
Right. Then it would
then
be.
you would be at 30, 32.
So how would you determine how you return them? Some
Your ICT kids would all come back at this moment,
but not every.
but not the gen ed
kid.
side of it. They would still stay as hybrid students.
Yeah, I'm saying that a class of 32, for one, students might feel uncomfortable being in a classroom setting that large. Staffing might feel uncomfortable, especially if there's any conditions that, that the underlying conditions that could put them in harm. And putting 31 kids in a room. Look, I got 24 desks set up in a dining room. Okay, and the amount of space 24 desks take, I can't imagine what the size classroom you would need for 31, 32 students. It would have to be enormous. The teachers would need microphones to be able to reach all of the students, and that's another thing that we need to be concerned with those masks, with those dividers. They block sound. It's the feedback that I get from my own students, and I have students from 18 districts, but the ones from Northport and Smithtown, at the end of a period, I might question and say, listen, who has desk shields in here? I kind of pick their brains.
Sure.
And I ask them what the issues are with them. And some of the issues are that it's very, very difficult to hear, So if we're spreading 25 or 30 kids in a classroom, is it something that's feasible, to do? Or do we need to break those sections and make them smaller? But you're telling me that they're going to be larger than 21 right now.
The senior class, when we bring them all back, they could be. Because if we're going to bring all our seniors back and those ICT students, that would be a full class. So it would be like any other year. But for the other, does that make sense? So,
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
but adding the guards and the desks, you're close every other year. You have tight aisles and things like that. There wouldn't be any of the social distancing occurring.
And how close would the desks be, do we know? Would they be 3 feet?
They'd be standard. They'd be what they are. What they would be at any time, any year. So they'd be back to back, the desks.
They would be back to back.
Yes.
As far as the returning these seniors, we're looking at 200 additional students, approximately per high school.
I would say 250.
250
Per day.
additional
But then
students
you'd
per
have to
day.
take out your total remote students. So, yeah, I would say anywhere
Okay.
200 to 250.
Okay, and the other question is, to piggyback on what Meredith said, I mean, there's certain grade levels, every grade level is important. And I agree with, with Laura that we have to come up with a plan that's safe, that's well thought through, rather than fixing one problem and then creating 2 additional problems. It's not what we want to do. But the safety and security of the students have to be our number one priority. Sixth graders, I have to ask this question: is there room right now in the middle schools to be able to return the sixth graders because of their age?
No,
Absolutely not right now.
no. We could, again, it's something that we'll continue to examine and brainstorm and try to work around, but we can't feed the kids. We can't fit them all in the rooms. Again, decisions on class size were made so that we thought we'd have half the kids in. And if you want to go change those kids' programs now at mid-year and attempt to do some of that and hire more teachers and get more space, I mean, it just doesn't, I just don't think it's educationally sound, and I don't think we can fit them.
Thank you.
Chris, I think you're working in the right direction. I think taking these steps is sound, smart planning. And I have said this on a number of occasions, that no plan works unless we have cooperation from the teaching staff. So I'm going to ask you, when this plan was put together, were the teachers consulted, the classroom teachers at the senior level, were they consulted?
I talk with the SCTA president, Mr. Barbera, quite often, as we've mentioned before. And that's something, a discussion that we had, where we are always, he and I share a great concern for our teachers' health and safety and well-being. And so it would be a concern. It to the extent that we could say, we're going to do this, we're going to make this change, and we have been signed off on by attorneys and architects and DOH, and we can do this, we can do that. But obviously, we want to take into account people's concerns and allay those fears, and we would continue mask wearing, and we would continue to we would stagger bell schedules so they're not all in the halls at the same time. That's a concern as well. So obviously, it's a concern, but I don't know necessarily it would stop us from doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I always look at it as we do focus, and rightly so, on the health and safety of the students, but we cannot just disregard the health and safety of the staff. And I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying that without that as part of the plan, it'll fall apart.
I always consider myself a teacher. I know maybe they don't want me, but I always talk about safety and staff, safety and health and welfare of my students and staff. They are one.
My question is, we have more people in, we get 2 cases. Does that mean a whole school is closed?
As you have seen of late, unfortunately, schools around us are closing more often. I'm on a superintendent's text yesterday. 3-4 schools in a row, elementary, middle schools, high schools, are quarantining and closing for a day or 2 at a time, or even longer. And if we have less social distancing, there is quite a strong possibility there will be more quarantines. If there are a great many more quarantines, you could see us go to transition to distance learning, as you have seen these other schools do, and as we had to do at North.
Just one last question. I know that, our building has to be deep cleaned every single night, and it's a much greater square footage that has to be cleaned. Because now we're cleaning desks on a regular basis. We're possibly cleaning shields, with dividers on a regular basis. Is there a need to upgrade our cleaning staff so that they're able to get the job done, get it done properly, to prevent, any potential infection or transfer of any virus to students? Have we upgraded our staff, and do we need to?
That's a question. Actually, I know we had attempted to do that this past year, I believe, Mr. O'Keefe.
I mean, over the last several years, we've tried to restore multiple units, including the custodial staff, to get them back to levels prior to the financial crisis. And one of the things that we were adding back this year was 10 custodians, 1 at each elementary level. Certainly, they are very, very thinly spread. So adding those additional desks and shields would be a tremendous burden. I don't think that you'd have the capacity of adding multiple additional custodians at each building, though, financially.
I'll just jump in at that moment and say I've never seen a custodial staff throughout, in all the buildings I'm in, nonstop, non-stop working. I commend them for it, and I thank them for it.
John, you were saying custodial staff at each building, or just
I mean,
elementary?
you have elementary schools that are 75, 85,000 square feet. There's only 2 custodians in them at night.
Okay.
You know, you got middle schools that are 150,000 square feet with 3 guys in them at night. You don't have a lot of staff.
So to bring that staff up to the proper level, what would the cost be? What do we, as far as staff members, what are we looking at?
Quite honestly, you'd probably almost have to double your night staff to have them at full capacity where they were pre-financial crisis.
Well, I'm talking about adding it to be able to accommodate the additional.
Well, you'd be
students
putting,
we're
you know, say two at each elementary, maybe 2 at middle. I'd have to look at the high schools. You probably have a dozen or so guys at night. You know, maybe they'd be only fine with another 1 or 2, but you're certainly talking more than 20.
So if we did 10 at the elementary schools and 2 at each middle school, it's 6, and then 2 at each additional high school, it's another 4.
Yeah.
It's 20 staff
And,
members.
you know, salary and benefits at about $100,000 each.
Custodians, $100,000 per employee.
Rough spitball, close enough.
Okay. All right.
Just real quick before we start getting a whole bunch of emails. That price per custodian, it includes benefits, pension benefits, your FICA tax that we pay the portion of, and so on.
Good point. Good point.
Any other questions? I have one. I mean, these plans that we have moving forward, are they all following New York State guidelines, DOH guidelines? We're not breaking any guideline per se if we were to do this?
To start to bring kids back,
we
students
roll them
back
out
with the desk
slowly.
shields. I'm going to turn to the boss here. My sense is we're going to be in the affirmative that we are, we
I
can
would
do
assume that
this.
you would never allow us to
We
do
would,
anything that
right,
we
right.
wouldn't.
And that's the, you know, when we talk about the careful consideration and why, you know, I think there are many times where folks would say, can't you do this quicker? Why, you know, what's so complicated? I've heard you talk about this for 2 meetings now. What's the problem? Why can't we make a decision, stick with it, go with it, run with it? You know, you just heard almost an hour worth of discussion about the complexities and complications that are facing this district and any other around the state in terms of that compliance, all of which, you know, could potentially change. You know, 2 weeks ago, we didn't have orange zones, red zones, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, this is something that is an ever-changing environment. But as to, you know, your direct question, by reducing social distance, by using barriers in combination with masks, is permissible under the guidelines. Absolutely.
We are checking on lunch.
Yeah,
That's
lunch
really
creates another
important
thing,
for
right?
me
What is-
at elementary, middle, and high.
When kids take a mask off to eat, what does that do? And if we have to try to use classroom space to feed kids, are they allowed to take the mask off to eat? And now they're, instead of being 6 feet, they're 3 feet. Where does that land? There's a lot of conversation around that, and there's not a lot of clear guidance sometimes. So we're looking at all of that.
So we still don't have all the information to make a decision yet until we get that guidance.
I would be hesitant to move forward until I hear this answer, because that's going to help us plan as to who, when, how.
I agree. Thank you.
We continue to plan everything that we can plan for. We continue to do the things that we know we can do. And I'm not ever, as your attorney, looking to thwart the genuine effort of this board and this community to provide a safe environment for kids to return to school, as, you know, for as much live instruction as we can safely provide. But, you know, I think Dr. Pelletieri's demonstrated to you that he and his staff have consistently and exhaustively reviewed every option before them, and down to what we were just talking about, down to the configuration of desks, sizes of desks, accommodation of the different equipment and furniture that we have. I mean, this is stuff that must be done. And, you know, for those of the staff who have been involved in contact tracing, the, you know, proctological examination that you received from the Department of Health about whether a window was open, a door was open, somebody was close, somebody wasn't, in making a determination that is as critical as whether the school is going to be able to open again after you make all these wonderful plans and all these great efforts and the investment of time, money, and so forth to do it. And then, to find out that you've got to be able to flick a switch and go back to a distance learning plan, in the course of 24 hours, it's a lot. And I would say to you that, nobody is trying to be obstructive at all, but everybody is trying to do it as sensibly, carefully, and of course, always safely as possible.
John, how much did we say the desk shields would be around for like every desk in secondary?
Oh, for the entire building?
Yeah, for like every building.
We had said about 300,000, I think, John.
Yeah, I mean, probably somewhere in that ballpark, because you've got, 6,000 students. So you probably have 8,000 or so desks.
And one more question.
more?
How many Chromebooks can you buy with $300,000?
200,000?
$300,000?
They're about $250 each.
And how many Chromebooks work on the system that we have? None. Okay, good.
Well, Chromebooks require Wi-Fi.
I'm just making sure that everybody knows that at home, that yes, we want to go to one-to-one, but as we've just heard, that there's no way to speed up that process at all. So yes,
But the
I'll still
Chromebooks
spend
are
another
working at
300,000
home.
too.
The Chromebooks are for at home, so the kids are using their own Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so we're spending $300,000 to send the kids home when we're trying to get them back in school. Okay. And we could turn around tomorrow and the governor could say, everyone can go back and you can take your mask off. Oh, I hope then election day has to roll around quicker. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm good. I just,
Letter F, approval of minutes for the October 7th, 2020 regular meeting. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Laura, second by Jim. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Visitors? No visitors. Business items, consent agenda A through D. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Bill, seconded by Meredith. Any questions? You have a question?
Sorry, just to back up. I did get a few emails, when you said visitor
I
section.
think that's on the back. I
Oh.
think that's towards the
Okay,
end.
okay.
Yep. That's okay. Seconded by Meredith. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Is that for the next one? Okay, sorry. Thank you. We are on the bottom of page 3, consent agenda A through L. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Rob, seconded by Laura. Any questions? I just have a question about this. There's a lot of clubs on here. I know that we've been pushing, along with going back to school full time, we've been pushing the clubs to start. Does this officially mean that these clubs have all talked about how they can run A day, B day? They've all talked about how they can run maybe with a remote student, and they can all start immediately after this meeting?
I'm going to ask Mrs. Hines, who's been waiting here very quietly tonight, to speak to that, if you don't mind, Erin.
Yes, our advisors worked directly with our principals and then myself. They came up with charters, which is how they outline how they're going to run the club, and they thoughtfully put in there how they would run it for both virtual and remote for both remote and then our hybrid students. Mr. O'Keefe was able to work out our busing for us, which we are very happy about, and we're looking to begin on October 26th. Any of the clubs or music ensembles that we're just a little bit needing to wrap our minds around a little bit more, get some more information, we're going to be discussing as a cabinet, and then we would be also bringing those forward in the future as well.
So it doesn't mean they're not starting at all. They were just waiting for a little more information.
Yes, I've been working with our music chairs and our music departments to ensure that those ensembles can also run, as well as like drama club and all of those things virtually.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Top of page 12, personnel, support staff, consent agenda A through F. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Meredith, second by Rob. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 6, Personnel Administrators, the appointment of the Remote Learning Academy Supervisors. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Bill, seconded by Laura. Any questions? Yes.
Just with regard to the remote academy, I think I should have probably asked this before, Dr. Pelletieri. So we're appointing now, this is for a full year. So let's say like it's a miracle and come November, December, everything goes back, no masks, no shields, everybody's back in school, the virus like disappears. Not that that would happen, but let's just say it does. So now we're appointing for a remote academy. What if we don't need it anymore?
Yeah,
What
the
happens?
MOA that we approved tonight has that contingency in there, and we have the ability to stop the remote academy. I would obviously
If
discuss
needed.
it with
Like, I
them
don't
if
think
needed.
it would
If-
happen, but I'm just saying, if we
Yep.
didn't need a full year remote
Yep.
academy, there
We-
is. Okay, thank you.
All in favor? I'm a abstention. Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 7 is contracts, consent agenda A through C. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Laura, seconded by Rob. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Letter 8 is Committee on Special Education, consent agenda A through B. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Bill, seconded by Meredith. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 9, appointment of board committee members. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Rob, seconded by Laura. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 10 is monthly reports. Jim?
I did bring back to the legislative committee the items that you brought to my attention at the last meeting. We've decided that it's probably in the our best interest to wait until after the elections are over before we start singling out which elected officials would be those that we should contact for some of these things. So right now, we're just going to be on hold, but the committee is fully aware of the direction the board wants us to go.
Jim, do you have a date for the next one?
No,
both of you are just going to wait until
right. We
after.
just want to wait for the election to be over, and then we'll put together a date.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep.
Just, we have a scheduled budget advisory committee meeting on October 27th. It is going to be a Zoom meeting. I don't believe it's a broadcasted meeting where it's going to be live on YouTube. I think at that meeting, they're going to be going over the goals and expectations of the committee. Still looking for recommendations from the Board of Education for that committee to look at. But I understand that maybe the first or second meeting is going to be discussing how the budget works, the codes, the different codes that are assigned to different schools and what their functions are. So that when the budget does come out, the proposed budget, they have an understanding of how and where to find, information. But that is October 27th. I believe it's a 7 p.m. start. Is that correct, Allison? Oh, at 8 o'clock start? Okay. I was trying to get to my calendar and I couldn't get it quick enough.
Anyone else? Sure.
I just wanted to say that we got our diversity task force up and running, and thank you to everybody who was involved in getting that up and running, and congratulations to the people who are being appointed. If anyone is here, that's wonderful. And I just want to congratulate them.
Second public comment, I have Miss Maria Sanders.
Good evening, everyone. This is a defining moment in history. Earlier tonight, we listened to Mr. Barbera speak about the history of education. Now think back 5 years ago and what your image of 2020 would be. Compare it to today. The American Academy of Pediatrics noted keeping schools closed places children and adolescents at considerable risk of morbidity and in some cases mortality. The pediatrics guidance concluded that everyone should start with a goal of having children physically present in school full-time. Now think forward 5 years. When you look back at today, what will you remember? Did we do our best for our students? Are they okay? Or are they dealing with the ramifications of this period in history? I hear the word impossible, and that's not okay. To quote David Beckham, who many will be familiar with, impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. As a parent, I beg you to not use the word impossible in respect to full re-entry of all students in Sachem for those that want to. And I have a request for you. When we were talking about sports, this board wrote a letter to get sports back. Has this board written a letter to Governor Cuomo asking him to lift those executive orders? I'm not saying carelessly throw everyone back in the buildings, but I am saying he gave us a list of directives that may not be relevant to our district today. I would ask Governor Cuomo to allow Sachem Central School District to do what is in their capability, in the best interest of their students and teachers, with everyone's health and safety being thought of, but to allow you to make the decisions on how to get our schools open. 6 foot is an arbitrary number. What if 5.5 foot was what worked for us? What if 4.5 foot? The AAP actually lists 3 foot of distance. So does the WHO. So I just ask you to really consider this, and please don't use the word impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Meredith, I know that we got a couple of emails if you want. Yep.
So I just want to start by saying that the reason why we opened up this email is so that if a person needs to be heard, but for some reason cannot be here at the meeting during the pandemic, they can send this. I don't know that every one of the emails that we received in that email box was for this exact reason. So therefore, I'm not going to read all of them.
Meredith, while you're pulling that up, we also agreed that if there's no name and no address and we can't verify that you're a Sachem resident,
Correct. That was the
we're
next
not going to read the email out loud. We have to be able to verify it.
Correct. So that was the next thing I was going to address. We did get an anonymous email. We cannot read an anonymous email. We do not know if that person is in fact one of our community members. So the one email I am going to read comes from a community member named Kimberly Cericchio Hamill. I'm so sorry if I messed up your name. To all BOE trustees, as a concerned and active parent of 5 sons in Sachem schools, I feel my voice should be heard by someone. Desk shields for elementary, middle, and high school are unsafe and naive for the district to institute. As a nurse of 20 years, I can tell you that you are putting all students in harm's way if you put these shields in place. The fact that you are not considering the microscopic danger you place in front of all students sharing desk shields or utilizing their own is beyond me. All students, whether young or older, are children and human. They will not keep the shields clean. They will touch other students' shields. They will not be better educated because of a shield. They will be more at risk of getting sick, not only with COVID, but other microorganisms. Using these shields will create more surface area for COVID to live on in order to be transmitted. Please, please, please do not use these shields. Please focus on your remote learning and perfecting your hybrid method. It is not worth $300,000. My elementary students do not need to be more responsible for adult matters any more than they already are. My middle school student has enough to carry back and forth to school and does not need to be concerned with the plastic desk shield that harbors health risks to the rest of my family. My high school student wants to focus on what is offered, not a shield for a desk. As like many other students, he is extremely frustrated at the school for their decisions and does not want the shield so we can fit more students in a class. You're not protecting them with this, and education should not include teaching them how to be responsible for plastic desk shields. If you bring about these shields, then you are creating a breeding ground for high-risk situations in school, on the buses, and in people's homes. Bringing everyone back is going to complicate what's already complicated, and you will shut down the little that the students have, as well as force students and families to quarantine due to the lack of knowledge the board has about how COVID lives and is transmitted. Unfortunately, it's quite long and it's going to continue to go on. Is there a way that we can make it, because it's going to go over my 3 minutes?
No, we
Okay.
agreed that it had to be 3 minutes.
Okay.
That's when we had
So
discussed it.
we do, I do want to say that I would read the whole thing if I had the time. I'm sorry, I'm a slow reader, but if you are going to send emails in, please make sure that they can be read within the 3 minutes. Please make sure that they are signed by someone within the community. And I do thank her for her input.
And we'll make sure that gets to all the board members as well. There's no discussion items for tonight. I think we handled that, but Rob did want to go back to one point.
I just want to go back. We just had an hour-long conversation on returning students, and I feel like the conversation just ended without any direction or any guidance whatsoever, which seems to be the trend. And we talked about the ICT kids coming back. Okay, Ms. Trombetta said the class sizes would be about 21. Is that correct, Ms. Trombetta, to bring them back?
Roughly, if we're bringing back the most an ICT full class, that side of it would be 12.
Uh-huh.
So if there's 6 in, you're going to bring in an additional 6, but it all depends on the section, like we have spoken about earlier. All the sections didn't split as evenly as we'd like. If it was supposed to be a class of 30, we would like 15 and 15. Some of them aren't like that. So it depends on the actual class itself.
But I thought
I'd have to
initially
take a
we
look.
said that we wouldn't have a class size of about 21 or 22 to start, and then possibly bring additional students back in.
It depends on what the gen ed side was. If the class was built as a special ed ICT class, the maximum amount of ICT students could be 12.
Okay.
And at that point, then the maximum amount of gen ed students should be 18,
The maximum.
the maximum amount.
But if we keep that number down to 21 or 22 students, we wouldn't have to purchase desk shields for 22 students. In other words, we'd be able to get them back right away.
I don't believe that they would fit necessarily. We'd have to take a look and see if they would be the 6 feet apart. I think they're set up that way, the desks, right? Yeah, okay,
You'd
yes.
have to look at the
Yep.
classes.
So can we make a decision tonight about possibly planning to bring these students in?
My understanding was that Mr. Clayton's going to do his due diligence on that lunch piece, and then we can move forward with the plan if you would like us to, around ICT and or seniors.
Right, but you're talking about a start of the end of November.
Yeah.
So if we give the authority tonight to move ahead with it, that gives you enough time to be able to get those students in for November, the end of November. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
So I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but at least with that population, I'd like to maybe move on that. Okay. Yeah. Make a motion to bring back the ICT students from 6 through 12.
All in favor? Opposed?
I mean, the superintendent has the authority to do that. So, I mean, it's not, you don't really, motion is, I understand the reason for the motion, the idea that you want to demonstrate that, but superintendent has the authority to make those decisions. He's working through it.
Chris, I just don't want to kick the can and have this conversation 2 weeks from now and lose 2 weeks. Yeah. So.
Please, of course.
The ICT 6 through 12 students, we're going to work to bring back.
Well, I think it was the discussion was under the circumstances that they could be brought back in compliance with the guidelines, in compliance with what I think your administration and staff determined to be. Well, I just, again, that's why I'm saying that, you know, a motion to say we'll bring them back is all well and good, but all of those things have to be in compliance first. And obviously, I would suspect that the board would rely upon the advice of its administration that it can be done in compliance and safely. And that I'm presuming that's embedded within the board's direction.
Yeah.
And but if that's,
I don't think that.
but we can make that clear, and that's on the record.
I'm only talking for myself, but I mean, I think it's semantics, Jim. I mean, I don't think anyone's doing anything outside the guidelines without the lawyer clearing it, and within the guidelines.
board motion.
Well, for-
And if you make a motion, that motion becomes, it passes. That is what's gonna happen. And then if he finds out that if for some reason it can't happen, then we're gonna be violating the law. We're gonna be violating the law.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. We just made a motion to make sure that these kids can come back safely in the cafeteria. And if so, then we're already giving guidance to let Chris and John buy these desk shields.
So I
to
just, maybe,
ensure-
maybe I can help frame the motion for you, which is to give the authority and the administration in consultation with council to work towards the return of those students in a manner compliant with guidance and regulations. Can we amend the motion to that, Mr. Scavo?
Just ask one before you amend it. Was it just ICT or was it ICT and seniors? Okay.
If we can deem the motion amended, that way, are you accepting that that's the motion as amended, Mr. Scavo? And we can have the second to that, and then,
Okay, good.
just so that it's very crystal clear as to what that's the intent of the
Alex,
motion.
you have that language?
Chris, you'll come back next meeting as far as the
Yeah, the
feasibility
progress
of the
made and
seniors,
feasibility.
semantics.
Well, we'll talk about the progress made as we move toward this, the ICT students, and we can talk more about the seniors, yes.
Okay, so at that point, even if we go out 2 weeks and you come back with information, does that still give you enough time to bring those seniors back by the end of November?
We will learn each time we bring kids back. So yeah, I think, yes.
Any future discussion items? We'll keep remote learning and in-person learning and
Sure.
hybrid learning on there, just so. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, November 4th, 2020 at 7:30 PM. Can I please have a motion and a second to move into executive session for the purpose of negotiations? Motion by Meredith, seconded by Laura. All in favor? Motion is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.